Hey, yeah. Whew. All right. Hello, everyone. I am Michael, and this is Michael's Cool Campsite. Today, I'm going to teach you guys how to build a fire. Sound good? Good. Now, the first thing that we have to start with a fire is, of course, our wood, right? So we have to make sure that you get something like this, a nice big log to chop, just like you saw me do. That's how we are going to get the wood for our fire. So when you chop wood, sometimes the bark, sometimes it'll fall off. So we want to make sure that when we're at our campsite that we put everything in a nice, neat pile. So our bark is going to go in one pile. And this is nice and dry, and you can break it apart and feed the fire with this. So this is going to be really, really helpful, okay? Now, our next thing is, when you chop wood, a lot of times you get chips that come off of the wood. So we're going to put all of our wood chips, kind of like you see on the playground sometimes, right in a pile like this. Remember, we want to keep everything in a pile, separate piles for each thing. So we're going to put our wood chips in the pile, and we're going to use those in our fire later, okay? Now, chopping wood and building fires is really tough work. So every good campsite, you need either a tent or a hammock. In our campsite today, we've got a nice hammock in between two trees like this for nice rest in between building our fire and building our campsite. And let me tell you, boys and girls, it doesn't hurt to have a good cousin like Paige to help you build a good campsite. Now, remember, I was talking about making our campsite very clean. You got to make sure that it's clean. In order to do that, you want to have maybe a rake over here, maybe a shovel. Shovel's always a good thing too. Make sure that the campsite's nice and clean, just like your rooms, right? Your parents say, make sure that you have a tidy room, a nice clean room. Well, that's the same thing with a campsite, because basically your campsite is your room when you're in nature, okay? So make sure it's nice and clean. We cleaned up our campsite here, and we made sure that we put all of our sticks, all of our logs in one pile, little sticks like that, and then the bigger logs, we chopped wood, we put it in this pile. So when you have a fire going, you can just add the log whoom, onto the fire, and the fire keeps going, okay? Next, over here, we have our bigger logs. So if we want to chop more wood, maybe tomorrow for a fire later, we can go ahead and chop more wood for that fire, okay? But these are big logs, and we're not going to use them for our fire tonight. And then over here, we have just sticks and leaves and stuff as we raked the campsite and made it nice and clean, okay? So, clean campsite, number one important thing. We have to put water in a jug like this, in a bucket, okay? And this bucket is just gonna be in case something happens, we can throw it on the fire really quick. Or, if the fire goes good, we can use the water at the end of the night when we're done, we can throw it on the fire. But always make sure that you're super safe and have a bucket of water right by your fire, okay? Before we start building our fire, I want to go over a few tools. Now, we already saw the rake and the shovel and the big axe that I used for chopping wood. This is the big one, right? This is the axe. Now, this little one, I think some of you guys have actually used this. Last summer when we were outdoor survival, you were chopping wood with this one. This one's called a hatchet. There's a really good book called Hatchet that some of you might have read. If you haven't read it, read it. It's really cool. This guy's in the wilderness, and all he has is a hatchet, and he has to survive. This is one of the most helpful tools that you can use. I'm using this because it's farther away from my hand, right? So you just do that, and you have fire at the end over here, okay? You can use a lighter, you can use matches, but of course, make sure that your parents are helping you or that they're lighting the fire, okay? But you need some source of fire, all right? Okay? We're gonna build a fire like a teepee. That's gonna be our shape. So think about a teepee in your mind, okay? This is the teepee fire that we're gonna build. Now I'm gonna show you each part of the fire that we're gonna build. This part is called tinder. And I know some of you outdoor survivalists have done this before and you remember that word, tinder. So this is our tinder. And boys and girls, what tinder is it's just really dry stuff. It's dry grass, dry leaves. There's even some pine needles in here from pine trees. It's just really, really, really super dry. And this is what we're gonna use to start our fire. Here, ladies and gentlemen, we have our kindling. This is kindling. Now, as you look at this, you can see that these are very thin, small sticks, okay? We don't want anything too big because starting with our tinder, we only have a very small fire here. Then we put on top of it our kindling. We want small, thin sticks. No bigger than this. It's very thin. You don't want anything bigger than that. You don't want a big, thick stick. Your kindling is going to be very thin, okay? So the fire can catch on fire quickly, all right? Now, that's your second step, is your kindling. After your kindling, you want to go onto your chips. These are your wood chips. Remember we saw wood chips earlier? These are gonna be your wood chips. These are a little bit thicker and bigger than your kindling, see? But they're not as big as your logs. You want to step between your kindling and your logs. So you want wood chips to feed the fire so that it gets bigger, right? We want a bigger fire before we finally add our logs, okay? This is our last step, boys and girls. We are going to put the logs on the fire. Once we put these bigger logs on the fire, it's gonna be a bigger fire and it's gonna last for a pretty long time, okay? So, let's start our fire, right? So you're gonna wanna have a fire pit. Something like this. This is called a grate, okay? So you want to have a nice place to start a fire, all right? So make sure you have that first. Now, so remember, tinder is really dry stuff, right? You want to put it at the base of the fire. Can you see that? At the base. So we are gonna go to our kindling. Let's choose some really nice, dry, thin pieces of kindling. So we got our kindling here, right? And what we're gonna start to do is we are gonna start to build our teepee, okay? It doesn't have to be perfect, but you might want to stick it in the ground or stick it together to support each other, okay? Kind of like this. Here's our teepee. See, boys and girls, how it's kind of slanted up. We're gonna build it at the base. So we're gonna go far away and we're gonna slant it in like that, like an upside down ice cream cone, like that. Okay? You want to make sure that you leave a little space so that you can light it too. Now we're gonna take a few chips, like this. Take a few chips, just lay it in real nice, like that. Just a couple. We got our logs. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to suffocate the fire, which means put too much on it so it doesn't have room to breathe and time to catch on fire, okay? So you want to add very slowly and very gently, okay? And one of the hardest parts of the fire is starting it. So we might need newspaper to kind of help it go, okay? So we're gonna start with our fire, okay? We're gonna go ahead and light our tinder. So go ahead and light the tinder, light it all over, and it's gonna catch on fire like that. You're gonna light the dry leaves. And look at how the fire climbs. As it starts, we want to start adding a little bit more to it. So we want to add smaller logs. Smaller logs, very small, okay? We want to build it. We want to build it up. We don't want to smother it. Start with the tinder, small. We add the kindling a little bit bigger. Then we add some of the chips over here to keep it going, especially underneath, down here. Maybe we can add some more of our chips, all right? The hottest part of the fire is in the middle. So you want to kind of throw it, if you can, throw it into the middle, like that. So as we have our fire here, I wanted to read you a couple of scriptures from the Bible, because as we hear in the Bible, as we read in God's Word, a lot of times God is compared to a fire, right? So let's talk a little bit about that while Paige starts to roast the wonderful marshmallows. In the book of Thessalonians in the Bible, in the New Testament, this is what it says. The Lord Jesus is revealed from heaven in blazing fire with powerful angels. That's crazy. It's basically saying that when Jesus comes back, he's going to come back in fire. There's going to be fire all around him as he comes back, floating on the clouds in the sky with angels, powerful angels all around him. That is so cool, isn't it? Here's another one. Well, in Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews, in the New Testament, it says that our God is a consuming fire. Now, what does that even mean, boys and girls? Well, there's a couple of things about God that we can say is like fire. First of all, his jealousy. Now, when we're jealous as human beings, that's not a good thing. God tells us not to be jealous because we're not supposed to be jealous. But God's jealousy is actually good for us because he doesn't want us to worship or love anything as much as we love him. And so we're supposed to love him first. And he's a consuming fire. It's like he's this powerful consuming fire that says, only me first, because I am your creator, I am your maker, right? Also, God is a consuming fire because he defeats our enemies. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, they built fires like this every single night. When they were in the wilderness, God saved them so many times from their enemies, like a fire going over a village and burning it completely, right? Just like the Egyptians were running through the Dead Sea after the Israelites, and God made the sea crash on them. Yeah, that was water, but it's like he's a consuming fire, just so powerful and defeating them. And the last thing is worship. So he's a consuming fire because it's like fire, it burns, it consumes everything that it touches. And that's basically what God, he just wants this powerful, burning worship to him. Just so passionate and powerful and loving and awesome and mighty, like a fire, right? Okay, so keep that in mind, guys. The worship, the jealousy, and also, what was the last one? Oh, defeating our enemies. He protects us. Now let's look over here what Paige is doing, and this will be our last thing. So we did this. I know that you guys last year too, that we did this around the fire. These are our s'mores, right? So she does an awesome thing. Why do you put the chocolate on the rock?
To melt it while I'm making the s'more.
Ooh, so nice and melted. And then how do you put your, what are you doing with the marshmallow?
I put it high above the flames and make sure to slowly rotate it.
And what does that do for it?
It crisps the outside.
Ooh, and melts the inside, right?
Yes.
And then you just want a nice long stick too, right?
So you don't burn your hand.
Nice. So that's it for now. Until next time, I love you boys and girls, and I will see you soon. This has been Michael's Cool Campsite with Paige, Michael, and my brother Daniel Philman. We will see you soon. Goodbye.